The slave market was loud and cruel. Chains clinked, strange alien voices shouted numbers, and the smell of oil and fear hung heavy in the air. On a raised metal platform, slaves were pushed one by one into the light, dirty, weak, and broken. No one cared about their tears or pain. There were not people here, just things to buy and sell. She was small, even for her kind. Her skin was pale blue, bruised in many places. Her arms and legs were thin, her eyes wide but empty. A heavy collar wrapped around her neck, blinking with a red tracking light. Her name was not a name, it was a number. 4,781. That's what her tag said. That's all she had left. A tall merchant shouted, "Next one!" Starting bid, 2 credits. But no one moved. Laughter echoed from the crowd. "Too skinny," someone said. "She can't even stand straight," another voice joked. "Not worth feeding," said a third. The merchant grabbed the chain and yanked her forward. She stumbled but didn't scream. She had learned long ago that pain was normal. Then a new voice came from the back. "Calm, steady. I'll take her." The crowd turned. A human stepped forward. He wore a worn-out jacket, dust on his boots, and a scar across his cheek. His eyes were sharp, but not cruel. A soldier, no doubt about it. The merchant raised an eyebrow. "You want that one?" "She's useless," he said. The human tossed a small credit chip toward the merchant. "That'll cover it," the merchant caught. The chipman shrugged. "Your money." Chains rattled as the girl was dragged off the platform and dropped at the man's feet. She didn't dare look up. She waited for the usual yelling orders, maybe a slap. But none came. The human crouched in front of her and gently reached out. She flinched. He didn't touch her. Instead, he pulled something from his coat, small, soft blanket. He placed it on her shoulders. "You're cold," he said quietly. She looked up, eyes trembling. No one had ever said that before. Once he stood and gave a slight nod to the guards. "She's with me now." They walked out of the market. She didn't speak. Her hands held the blanket tight, afraid someone would take it away. The city outside was just as loud and cruel, but beside the human, it felt a little less sharp. They reached a small landing bay. A simple ship waited there, not shiny or rich, but clean, safe. Inside, the human guided her to a seat. She sat slowly, unsure if it was a trick. He walked to a storage cabinet and came back with a small meal pack and a cup of water. Double quotes, "Eat," he said. She stared at the food. He didn't force her. He just sat across from her and waited. After a long pause, she picked up the cup and took a sip, then a bite. Her hands shook. He spoke again. "Do you have a name?" She looked down. 4781. He frowned. "That's not a name. It's what they called me," she said softly. He leaned back. "You can choose a new one?" She blinked. "Choose." "Yes," he said. "You're not property anymore." Her throat tightened. Food felt warm in her chest now, not just in her stomach. "What should I call you?" he asked. She stayed silent. No one had asked her what she wanted before. Ever. That night, she lay on a soft bed inside a small room in the ship. A real bed, not the floor, not a cage. The human had locked the door from the outside not to trap her, but to keep others out. He had said, "Rest. No one will hurt you here." She looked at the blanket again. It was still wrapped around her shoulders. She touched the collar on her neck and slowly, very slowly, pulled it off. The red light stopped blinking for the first time. She felt the weight of her own skin, the air on her neck, her own breath, her own space. She didn't know who he was or why he saved her, but for the first time in her broken life, she didn't fall asleep in fear. She closed her eyes with the faint feeling of something she never thought she would know again: hope. And somewhere deep inside her, a voice whispered, "Maybe this is the beginning." The ship hummed quietly in deep space. Stars drifted slowly outside the window, silent and endless. Inside, she sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the blanket tight around her shoulders. The room was still, the light soft and warm. She hadn't spoken since last night. She hadn't run either. He had left her alone, but not forgotten. A soft knock sounded, not loud or sharp. She froze. Then the door opened slow. Careful, it was him. It's the human. He stepped inside holding something as simple. Bowl of soup, warm and smelling of real spices. He didn't come too close, just placed it on the small table and sat across the room in a chair. "You hungry?" he asked. She didn't answer, but her eyes stayed on the bowl. "Eat if you want," he said, leaning back. Relaxed. Still silence. After a long pause, she moved. Just a little. Then slowly, carefully, she stood and stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she picked up the bowl. The first spoonful made her eyes sting. She didn't cry, but the warmth spread through her chest like fire in the snow. He watched. Quiet, respectful, not staring, just present. Then he spoke again. "Did you sleep all right?" She gave the smallest nod. "What did you dream?" She shook her head. "Nothing." He smiled gently. "That's better than nightmares." She looked up. Something in his voice made her want to speak more. Something safe. "Why?" she asked. "Why? What? Why did you buy me?" He exhaled, thinking for a moment. Then said, "Because nobody else was going to. And I couldn't leave you there." Her grip tightened on the bowl. Her lips parted. And for the first time, she whispered, "I thought, maybe you wanted a servant." He shook his head. "No, I want you to be free." Her heart skipped. "Free." She echoed. He nodded. "Yes, you get to make choices now, starting with your name." She blinked. "My name." "You said they called you 4781, he said. "But that's not a name. You deserve better." "I've never had one," she said softly. "Well, you can pick one," he replied. "Or I can help." She looked down. "What do you humans name?" "They're people." He smiled. "We have thousands of names, but names aren't just words. They're promises. Power, yours should mean something." She thought for a long moment. Her mind wandered back through broken memories of Cage's commands. Cold floors. But one word had stayed with her. One she'd heard whispered between two older slaves before they were taken away. "Lyra," she said quietly. He tilted his head. "Lyra. That's a good name. You want to be Lyra?" She nodded. "Yes, it's soft, like music." "Then Lyra it is," he said. She touched her chest, repeating the name inside her mind like a quiet prayer. Lyra. She wasn't a number anymore. The next hour passed in silence. But not empty silence. The air felt different now, like the tension had cracked open just a little. The human he still hadn't told her his name stood and said, "There's a sink and towel in the next room. You can clean up if you'd like." Lyra stood slowly. Unsure, he pointed down the hall. No locks, no guards. Still unsure, she moved. Her steps were light, like walking on thin glass. But when she reached the washroom and closed the door, she didn't hear any footsteps behind her. No one watching. She stared into the mirror. The girl in the glass was thin, dirty, and scared, but her eyes were not dead. Not anymore, she washed. Her face combed her tangled hair. She even found a soft shirt folded neatly beside the sink. It was too big, but clean. She put it on. When she stepped back out, he looked up and smiled. "Better?" She nodded. "You look like Lyra now," he said. She sat near him, still not too close. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. "Can I ask something?" she said. "Anything?" "What's your name?" He chuckled. "Name's Keller." "Keller," she repeated. "Is that a strong name?" He grinned. "I'd like to think so." She smiled, small but real. Then she asked something even she didn't expect. "Do I really belong to myself now?" Keller leaned forward, voice calm. "But strong? You always did. You just forgot." And in that moment, Lyra realized something strange. Something wonderful. She wasn't waiting for orders anymore. She was waiting for tomorrow. The morning light inside the ship was soft, a warm yellow glow that touched the walls like gentle fingers. Lyra woke slowly, not from a shout or cold water, but from the sound of something strange humming. A low, peaceful human tune echoed through the hallway. She sat up, blanket still wrapped around her, heart steady for once. No chains, no footsteps, no pain. She stepped out of her room, bare feet touching the cool floor. The scent of cooked food hit her nose eggs, something spicy and something sweet she didn't know. In the kitchen, Keller stood by a small stove, flipping something in a pan with ease. He looked calm, normal. Like cooking for a guest was something he always did. She stayed quiet, unsure if she should speak. But he turned around before she could back away. "You're up," he said with a smile. "Good timing. Breakfast's almost ready," she nodded. Her voice didn't come yet. He placed 2 plates on the small table, one in front of her, one for himself. Then he sat. She stared at the food. It looked real. Not stale protein cubes, not dry powder. Real warm, steaming. Food. The plate had colors she hadn't seen in years. Yellow, red, green. Her stomach growled, louder than she expected. Keller chuckled gently. "Go ahead. I made extra." Lyra picked up the fork slowly. Her fingers trembled. She took a bite, and then something happened. Something small but powerful. She made a sound. A tiny, surprised sound from the back of her throat. Not pain, not fear. Joy. She chewed slower, tasting every part like it might vanish. Then she took another bite, and another. She didn't speak, but Keller didn't need her to. Just ate his own meal quietly, letting her enjoy it. When she finally looked up, her lips moved on their own. "This is amazing," she whispered. Keller raised a brow. "You've never had real food?" "Not since I was taken," she replied. "They fed us scraps." He looked down for a second, then said, "You'll never eat like that again. Not while you're here." Lyra blinked fast. She wasn't used to kindness that came without a price. After breakfast, he cleaned the plates. She offered to help, but he just smiled and said, "You're a guest, not a worker." That word echoed inside her. Guest. She walked through the ship, slowly touching the walls like they were made of clouds. Each room had something different: tools, plants, storage, even a small music player. She stopped in front of a mirror and stared at her reflection again. Her hair was still messy, but her skin looked clearer. Her eyes less empty. Then something else caught her eye. On the shelf nearby sat a small silver box. It glowed gently, curious. She opened it. Inside was a thin metal bracelet. Plain, but beautiful. It shimmered softly with every movement. She picked it up carefully. "You can keep that if you like," Keller's voice said behind her. She turned fast, startled. "I didn't mean to steal," she said quickly. "You're not stealing," he replied. "It's yours now." She looked at the bracelet, then at him. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because it suits you." She held it close. It wasn't gold. It wasn't rare. But it was hers. And for the first time in her life, something belonged to her. Later that evening, they sat together in the main room. Soft sound played in the background music, slow and calm. Keller was fixing a broken device, his hands moving with purpose. Lyra just watched, her body finally still. Then he said something simple. "You smiled earlier." She blinked. "When?" After the first bite, he said. It was quick, but it was there. Lyra looked away, a strange warmth rising in her chest. "I didn't mean to," she said. "That's the best kind," Keller replied. Silence stretched between them, but it was peaceful now. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Then Lyra said, "Can I ask another question?" "Of course." "If I'm not a slave anymore, and not just a guest, what am I?" He put down his tools, looked at her with steady eyes, and said, "You're Lyra. That's enough." She didn't know why, but those words made something shift inside her. She was Lyra, not for 781, not a thing, not broken, just Lyra. And this time, when she smiled again, she didn't try to hide it. The rain hit the ship's roof like a soft drum. Outside the spaceport window, silver clouds covered the alien sky, heavy with storm. Lyra sat on the floor near the heater, legs crossed, a small blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She wasn't hiding this time. She was simply warm. Keller stood nearby, checking a crate of supplies. He worked with quiet hands, never rushed, never loud. Lyra watched him without fear now. She had started learning his rhythms, the way he always gave her space, the way he never looked at her like the others once did. But today, she had questions. "Keller," she said, her voice steady. He looked over, surprised. She spoke first. "Yes." "Do humans think scars are ugly?" He paused, then walked over and sat beside her. The question hung between them like thick fog. "Depends," he said. "Some wear scars with pride, some try to hide them, but they're not ugly. Not to me." He looked down at her arm and slowly rolled up the sleeve. Faded symbols burned into her skin, not words. Not marks of her people, but the brand of an owner. Sharp, cruel lines in a language she never spoke. Keller didn't flinch. "Who did that to you?" he asked. "I don't remember his name," she replied. "They changed too often. Every time I was sold, someone new added one." He nodded slowly. "We're passed around. Like furniture," she whispered. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small scanner. Quietly, he hovered it above the marks. The screen blinked red. "These weren't just for control," he said. "They were designed to track you. Even after escape, I tried to run once," Lyra said. "I didn't make it past the gate." Keller stared at the marks, then placed the scanner back. "Do you want them removed?" She looked at her arm again. The symbols were part of her. A map of her suffering. But she also hated them. Hated how they reminded her of who she used to be. "I don't know," she said. "If they go, maybe I'll forget how far I've come." Keller nodded, understanding. "Then they'll stay until you're ready." She felt a tightness in her throat, but forced herself to ask the next thing. "Why do you care?" He looked at her. "Because I've seen what happens when no one cares." She lowered her head. "Do you want to know something?" she asked. "Only if you want to tell me." "I once asked a guard why they did this," she said. "Why they treated us like less than animals. What did he say?" "He said we were made to be owned, that our pain had a price." Keller clenched his fists, but kept his voice calm. He was wrong. "I know that now," she replied. They sat together in silence, the kind that no longer hurt, the kind that felt like healing. Later that night, Lyra stood in front of the mirror again. She looked at her reflection, this time without shame. The shirt Keller gave her covered the worst marks, but she didn't look away from the one still visible. She placed her hand over her shoulder where the oldest scar rested. Then she said to herself, "You survived." She stepped out of the room and found Keller sitting on the floor beside the small fire unit. He looked up as she approached. She didn't sit across from him this time. She sat beside him. "Will I always feel broken?" she asked. "Feeling broken means you haven't stopped fighting," he said. "The ones who stop feeling are the ones truly lost." She turned her head slightly and asked, "Have you ever felt that way?" He didn't speak right away. "Yes," he said finally. "During the war, I lost people, good people. I stopped sleeping. I stopped laughing. I felt like a shell." "What brought you back?" He looked at her, a small voice that said, "Get up. Someone still needs you." She smiled a little. "Maybe now I hear that voice too," she said. "That's all it takes," he replied. "Just once. Just enough." Lyra leaned against his shoulder, not asking permission, and he didn't move away. She closed her eyes, not because she was tired, but because she trusted the silence. For the first time, her scars didn't burn. They simply existed, part of her past, but not her future. The city was alive with noise hovercars buzzing through the air. Flashing signs and alien scripts, voices shouting across the streets. Lyra walked beside Keller, her steps slow but steady. This was the first time she had seen so many beings. Up close, free, walking where they wanted. And she wasn't in chains. Her eyes stayed low at first. Memories pulling her back, but Keller kept beside her like a wall of calm. He didn't touch her, didn't guide her, just walked with her as if she belonged at his side. They passed market stalls with bright fruits, glowing tools, and even street performers playing strange instruments. No one yelled at her, no one ordered. Her to work still, she could feel the Azalean faces turned, whispers rising in the crowd. Some looked at her collarless neck with confusion, others looked at Keller with suspicion. She heard a sharp voice behind them say, "Another pet for the human." Another laughed, probably bought her cheap. Keller stopped walking, but didn't turn. Lyra felt her breath catch, the words like stones hitting her chest, but Keller only said, loud enough for them to hear, "She's not a pet, she's my equal." "Try saying it again." The voices went quiet. Ira looked up at him. Eyes wide, he kept walking as if nothing happened. They reached a small clinic on the corner where Keller picked up a medical pack. The alien nurse behind the counter kept glancing at Lyra, but said nothing. As they walked out, Lyra asked in a low voice, "Do you always speak like that?" "Only when people need reminding." Keller said, "You didn't have to defend me." He looked at her. "I didn't have to rescue you either, but I did your worth standing up for." She felt something rise in her chest, something sharp and warm and new. Outside the clinic, a small alien girl stood beside a fruit cart. She was no older than 6, with wide yellow eyes and short feathers on her head. She stared at Lyra, blinking, and then pointed. "Are you free?" the little girl asked Lyra. Froze. The mother rushed over and pulled the child back, whispering, "Don't ask questions like that." But Lyra stepped forward. She knelt down slowly so she could look the child in the eyes. "Yes," she said softly. "I'm free now." The little girl smiled, then ran off with her mother. Lyra stood up straighter. They walked through the rest of the city without fear. When they returned to the ship, Keller placed the medical pack on the table and went to check fuel levels. Lyra sat down in front of the mirror again, but this time, something was different. She didn't look small anymore. She didn't look weak. She looked like someone who had survived, and she wasn't walking behind him anymore. She was walking beside him that night after they shared dinner. She spoke without being asked. "I want to help others like me." Keller looked up. "Surprised, but proud, you mean? Freed slaves?" She nodded. "The ones who are still lost. The ones who don't know they can stand." He leaned forward. "Then we'll find them together." She smiled, and this time her smile wasn't small. She looked out the ship window at the stars beyond. The city, a glowing line of endless light, tanned for the first time. She didn't feel like she had to run. She had already arrived. The stars outside the ship blinked like soft lanterns in the dark. Lyra sat by the window, her knees pulled up, her hands holding a small mug of warm tea. The silence was deep but not cold. Inside her chest, something stirred and entered the room, holding a message pad. His face was unreadable, but his voice was careful. "You should hear this," he said. She turned to face him. His hand shook just a little as he played the recording. The voice that came through was broken and full of static, but Lyra heard it clearly. A group of former slaves, some from her home world, had crash-landed after escaping another ship. They were hiding, low on food, and afraid of being taken again. "They need help," Keller said. "I can get you there." Her heart pounded. Her kind, survivors like her, faces she might know, stories like hers. Part of her wanted to run to them, hold them, remind them they were not alone. But another part looked around this ship. The blanket folded neatly on her bed, the bracelet still shining on her wrist, the warm meals, the quiet nights, Keller's voice, his presence. His promise. "What happens if I go?" "Shh," she asked. "I'll drop you off," he said. "Help them, stay with them, start fresh. You won't owe me anything, and if I stay," he looked at her for a moment, "then we build a life together. However, you want it. I won't stop you either way." She stared out the window. A star blinked brighter than the others. "I thought I'd be running forever," she whispered. "But now, I'm not sure if I want to leave you." "Don't have to decide now," Keller said. "I already know," she replied. She turned toward him, her eyes clear. "I want to stay." He didn't smile, didn't speak, but his shoulders relaxed, and she could feel the weight drop from him. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I've never been more sure," she said. She stood up and stepped closer to him, not with fear, not with hesitation. "With choice, this ship is the only place where I felt like a person." not property. I want to stay, not because I owe you, because this is home now. Keller nodded slowly. Then it's your home too. They spent the evening preparing supplies to send to the survivors. Food packs, water units, med kits. Lyra wrote a message. Herself, you are not alone anymore. Freedom is real, Leith. Found it and give up. She looked at the words 3 times before sending the message. Every line felt like a piece of her soul going out into the dark later. They sat side by side near the ship's control panel. Lyra leaned back and looked at Keller. Do you think the others will make it? I think your message will give them something stronger than food, he said. What's that? Hope she rested her head on his shoulder, not because she was tired. Because she chose to. I didn't think I could be happy again. She whispered, that's how healing works. Keller said. It sneaks up on you when you're not looking. She closed her eyes. Not to hide, but to feel the moment fully. She didn't need to run anymore. She didn't need to bow. She didn't need permission to exist. This was her life now, and it was hers by choice. The seasons changed on the outer colony world, though not in ways most humans would notice. The sun rose slower, the nights stayed warm longer, and soft winds carried pollen that sparkled in the air like tiny stars. Keller's ship rested on the hillside now, more like a home than a vessel. Green vines climbed the landing gear, and small flowers bloomed at the edge of the ramp. Inside, Lyra knelt beside a group of young alien girls. They listened with wide eyes as she traced letters in. The dirt, her voice calm and full of patience. Her scars were still visible, but no longer sharp. No one asked where they came from. These children only knew her as Teacher Lyaroth, the one who smiled and taught them how to speak. Read and hope. Keller leaned against the doorway, watching her with quiet pride. He had added a few things to the ship: a kitchen garden, extra beds, a small library. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to grow, enough to live, enough to be more than what they were before. Later that evening, the children ran back to their homes. Lyra stood on the hill, watching the twin moons rise. Her hair blew in the breeze, no longer tangled or hidden. Keller joined her, placing a warm mug in her hands. You're a good teacher, he said. They listen, she replied. No one ever listened to me when I was their age. They listen because they see strength, and they see someone who made it out. She turned to face him, eyes bright in the moonlight. I was afraid I'd never be more than a slave, she said. I thought all I had left were numbers and chains. You're more than free now, Keller replied. You've become someone others look to when they want to stand up again? Lyra looked down the hill at the lights glowing from nearby homes. Families were laughing. Music played softly from a distant gathering. The people had begun to rebuild here, a place where former slaves, wanderers, orphans had slowly come together to create something new. Do you remember the first thing I said to you? She asked. He nodded. You gave me a number I barely believed I was real, she said. Now I teach others how to find their names. Keller reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in soft cloth. He handed it to her without a word. She opened it slowly. Inside was a smooth metal plaque. Her name was etched into it, Lyran, both human and her native language. Beneath it, 2 words, You matter. She pressed her hand over the words, her fingers shaking. No one ever gave me anything like this, she whispered. It belongs above the door, he said. To remind anyone who enters what this place stands for. She held it close, then leaned against his chest, her eyes wet, but her heart steady. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me, he replied. Door, you're the one who made this home. I just gave you a door to walk through. The wind blew gently as they stood together. The stars above were the same stars that once looked down on her pain. Now they looked down on something else. Hope, peace, and a future that no longer felt like a dream. That night, Lyra wrote in her journal. It was something Keller had given her early on, and now its pages were full. But this was the last page. Am Lyra, not 4781. Not a number, not a forgotten thing. I am a teacher, a builder, a woman. I have a name. I have a voice. I have a home. She closed the book and smiled, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt complete, not because someone saved her, but because she had saved herself.